In this movie, we will address the skill set of a project manager from an application knowledge standpoint. We'll answer questions such as, is it necessary for a project manager to be a technical expert? And if not, how can they manage a project successfully? What do they need to know? We'll start off by immediately answering the first question. No, it is not necessary for a project manager to be a technical expert, on most projects that is, because of course there are several exceptions. Their profession could simply be project management. And this is because managing projects is an art in itself, as we mentioned during a previous movie when we defined what makes up a project. So now the big question remains, if a project manager doesn't have technical expertise in a particular industry, then how can they successfully manage complex projects? This is because most application areas have a set of standards and regulations to be followed. A project manager should be aware of these standards and regulations. The more familiar and experience that a project manager has within that application area, then the greater of an edge he or she has on succeeding within that project. This is of course where developing that special niche can really come in handy. But let's define the three things that we had just mentioned, which were application area, standards, and regulations, and that'll in turn clarify what was meant by that statement. Application areas refer to the specialized areas that may exist within a project. They are significant common elements within categories of projects. For example, a software development project has a specific technical element that is specialized, and a construction project of a housing complex has another. These elements are significant within those projects, but again, may not exist in others. Some broad examples of these elements include functional departments, such as marketing, IT, sales and legal, technical elements, such as the example we used of software development and construction, management specializations, such as product development, and industry groups, such as the automotive industry. There's a very structured definition to a standard, so I'll give it to you verbatim from the Pmbok guide. It is a document established by consensus and approved by a recognized body that provides, for common and repeated use, rules, guidelines, or characteristics for activities or their results, aimed at the achievement of the optimum degree of order in a given context. I know that's a mouthful. Read it carefully and it'll make better sense. Standards typically begin as guidelines and are later adopted as standard practice. They are generally accepted as a regulation, but they are not mandatory. For example, let's consider the size of a CD. Each manufacturer doesn't create their own size for the most part. All CDs are typically the same size, but that is because manufacturers benefit from making CDs as a standard size, and we've come to expect that. A regulation refers to a government-imposed requirement. Notice the word requirement, which equates to mandatory. These requirements typically specify characteristics of a product, process, or service. The Pmbok uses a great example, which is that of building code. But let's circle back to project management and come back to the reason we're covering all of this in the first place, which is to understand one of 5 areas of expertise that are necessary for effective project management. What we've learned here is that in order to manage a project, the project manager must understand and be familiar with the standards and regulations of the application area within their project. So even though a project manager may not hold an expertise within that function, such as developing software themselves, they should be familiar with the standards and regulations within that specialty, or better said, application area. And that wraps up our overview of application knowledge area, standards, and regulations, one of 5 areas of expertise for achieving effective project management.